Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. My apologies for pushing forward the time by 1 hour. We had a little bit of a scheduling conflict with Elmer, but Elmer is here joining us and he's going to give us an update about what China is up to. And this is a very fascinating conversation because it again tells you that history almost always repeats itself. So without further ado, let's invite and let's welcome Elmer Yuen to our show. Elmer, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
How are you? How are you?
I'm doing very well, Elmer. So you think that the new Indo-Pacific Co-Prosperity Sphere is something that has been taken out of an earlier document that had had good success for another country. So why don't you kind of give us a quick history lesson and draw parallels between then and now?
You see, the Japanese had a very, very extensive plan. The Japanese military, because the civilian government at that time had been murdered, in fact, literally murdered by the Japanese. We call the Guangdong military, and Guangdong means east part of Japan, and they were the one who really ran the country. From 1933 and by invading China and so on. So they had a very, very extensive plan how to run this whole Asia business. Of course, not as far as India, but as far as Burma, which is close enough. And then that plan include the Pearl Harbor, and they want half of the Pacific, which means they invaded, as you know, as south as Darwin, and then they occupy Singapore, Hong Kong, and all the Indonesia for oil. Very, very detailed plan. And that plan, in fact, if people really understand geopolitics, must study that plan. What they do is Japanese are, as you know, they are meticulous in planning, and especially those older generation people, they've done the plan so well. So it's really called the East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. So which means really the area we're covering now, maybe all the way to Burma. They didn't have India in mind, right? Because India was probably neutral, and they didn't have much use of that. But up to Burma, there's a lot of mineral, timber, oil, all rubbers, all the natural resource they need, and the market. So the Chinese, the communist Chinese, have read it. This is what I've been discussing with the military people in China. All right, the military, the best people in China, in communist China, goes to the military because they want the best. They have a very simple system. People work to supply the military. That is their economics. I mean, what they learn from the West is something different. They don't care. Those are secondary. Most important, people work, and the money or the whatever they created is to supply to the military. That is a simple way. This is the old way for Chinese for the last 2,000 years, 3,000 years. The rest is only window dressing. So anyway, the whole idea is they've adopted the Chinese Communist Party and their military have adopted this Japanese plan. So they want to share. That's why they took over. You see the South China Sea, that whole area. They want to make it a sphere, and more than that. And the what's happening in Ukraine really encouraged them to do it, because America make it very simply. They don't want to have a fight with any nuclear power, any. So that's why America sent no troop into Ukraine. They're afraid of any direct contact with Russia, which is a nuclear power. And the same is going to happen. So which means they are counting on the Taiwan and maybe some help from Japan and maybe some help from Australia to help Taiwan to fend for itself, which is very, very similar to the Ukraine situation right now, right? And very clever. You see, Putin never formally, he said, I give permission, but you never see any video or witness or evidence that they have directly into that. They say, oh, this is part of Russian. Ukraine was part of Russia, same as Taiwan. All right, part of Russia, and same as Japan, same as Korea, same as Vietnam. In the old days, that whole thing was part of China. Really, down to Thailand and so on, Burma, everything was China. So they can use exactly the same excuse and control that whole area. And now, of course, they're not interested to invade India. But at least somehow, that's probably the borderline. So you are going to see them right at your front door. And this is what I feel that is the Indo-Pacific Co-Prosperity Sphere. And it's really a part of the One Belt, One Road. It's more or less the same thing. More or less the same. But they, as you just told me, they've gone all the way to be near Sri Lanka, almost. And now, of course, you feel the urge to do something, and your president or prime minister feel the urge to do something there to stop them. They're going to go all the way, keep going, Djibouti, and of course Africa is no question. And so it's a very ambitious plan. And unfortunately, what U.S. have done in Ukraine and in Afghanistan encourage the Chinese to go all the way. Meaning what they decided to do now, never mind the economy, never mind the image, never mind the diplomacy. As long as we have enough resource to supply our military in weaponry and things such, the Chinese soldiers are paid as well as the American soldiers. Same, but things are much cheaper in China. Maybe one quarter the price of China of US.
Right.
So as a result, the soldiers are living very well. And of course, military. The Chinese, this is the way it's going to be. Two things: people produce, and the military will use their resource to fight. The other things can stop for the time being, can wait. All the IT, everything, unless it's for military, everything is secondary. Only two things count. So that's why you saw them last year. They've been buying a lot of grain, food. They're storing food. They're storing oil, energy, and they are probably stocking up in coal too. All right, because you need still a lot of coal. So they are preparing for a huge war, and they are not afraid to use nuclear weapon. And America or India are afraid even to talk about it. So this is the problem. China, I think Chairman Mao, in one of his meetings in Europe with all his communist brothers, he said he has no problem having a nuclear war with the US, lose half the population, right? Because China, they can give birth to people, let's say 10 million a year easily, or more than that. So this is the problem. We are afraid of using or being attacked by a nuclear weapon. They are not. Then you have a serious problem. You understand? So every time you talk to most people, we are normal person. You talk to them about nuclear weapon, they say, "Oh no, that's a weapon. That's an agreement. They're never going to use it." Why not? Why not? This is the whole problem. Our mentally and U.S. That's the worst. I've been living in D.C. area doing lobbying for 20 months. Now, that's all I do. I'm really a full-time job. And including Pompeo and all these people, they use the word deterrence. Deterrence means you wait. All right? You don't do anything active. You just wait. You are being passive. You are being defensive and just build up a lot of things. But when you use deterrence, Chinese know that you are not going to attack them. And this same thing is happening in Ukraine. It's deterrence. So deterrence means if they attack, they will pay a price. This is exactly what Biden say. Oh, they can take away a few things, and then we'll sanction them. It's already you're mentally ready for them to attack, and then allow them to pay the price. But that is not good. You're not going to win. General MacArthur said the reason you go into a war is to win, not to stand still. But the whole problem is the free world. All they know is to stand still. They don't understand how evil you are dealing a regime you are dealing with, a group of people. And if you use deterrence on the communist Chinese, it's a huge mistake. It's going to be in history. We'll say that we are much stronger than them. in many areas. But if we keep on using deterrence, and then we're afraid to go to war with them, we are afraid to go to a direct war with them. And this is going to be a very serious problem because over time, little by little, they keep pushing, like the Nazis, like the Japanese. Fortunately, U.S. at that time had tremendous resource after Pearl Harbor. So in a matter of less than a year, they totally recover. And the Japanese have failed to destroy all the carriers, the U.S. carriers. So U.S. with their huge resource, really they militarized the whole country, the defense industry, and being able to come back after fighting. So it's the U.S. have saved us. But now you live in the States and I'm in the States. You know how weak these people are right now. Seriously, very, very weak.
So I want a couple of things. You have brought up a lot of interesting points. I want to just dwell on two things because I know you have another 20 minutes before you need some recharge. You have back-to-back shows. I just have two main questions. First question is, how prepared is Taiwan?
Taiwan is prepared, but half of the Taiwan population, they are not ready to fight. They say if we lose, then we just become Chinese again. You understand? They
Yes.
kind of sitting on the wall. So half of Taiwan, they're going to use. They can use. China can use the same on Taiwan as Russia used on Ukraine, meaning Taiwan historical has been part of China, and the people want us to liberate them. And you are helping them to resist us, resist their reunion with China. I mean, look at the Putin speech. It's well made, and you can interpret both ways, and it sounds reasonable. So they can use the same in Taiwan, and they can even use the same in Singapore. Can you imagine? Really? I mean, they used it in Hong Kong. Now, how many people really protested? Now, Hong Kong swallowed it. They swallow Hong Kong, and Hong Kong, we swallow the communists. All right? And this is what's happening in Hong Kong right now. So I'm not talking from imagination. It's factual. What's happening in Hong Kong is going to happen in Taiwan. And if they're going to run this co-prosperity sphere, it's all over, including Japan, Korea, Taiwan, all the way down to maybe the northern tip of Australia, and including all these small countries like Borneo, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Laos, and Thailand, you name it, and the Philippines. And the Philippines, that is equal to almost half the world's GDP we are talking about. And this is his ambition. Please read up the Japanese plan. That was Japanese. Japanese had the same ambition, exactly the same ambition. That's how they started the World War II. They can use the resource, and Japan they can use manufacturing. As you can see, they were really great. I mean, Japanese are very, very good in manufacturing. So as long as they have the raw material, they can produce anything. So China have exactly the same ambition. So even though they are in trouble economically right now, but if their mentality is only to fight a war, all right, doesn't matter how bad the stock market, the property market, the foreign currency, as long as they can supply enough machine and pay the soldiers well. For the time being, that is good enough. They are fulfilling their mission. And we need to think about that. We cannot all every day poo-poo them. Oh, the Winter Olympic was horrible, this and that. These are superficial. At the end of the day, look at the Putin, the 190,000 soldiers on the border, sitting on the border. And you try to, Ukraine, your soldiers try to get into those two independent states. So you wouldn't dare to because you don't want to pick up a fight. That's what Putin is doing. And China will do exactly the same. They can send millions of soldiers and they're not afraid to use nuclear weapon. And same thing in Russia and China. They are not afraid to use hypersonic with nuclear warhead. I'm sure India is developing something similar. But you cannot imagine a peaceful country, a democratic country like yours, start using it. That is the problem. We only talk about deterrence.
No, you have made an excellent point, Elmer. I have one question that I want to hold back, but I have a follow up on this one. Now, you said that China is harboring all these ambitions post Olympics. Is Xi Jinping feeling stronger now against the deep state, or do you think the deep state has some cards up its sleeve? What is that politics playing out now? How is that
You know,
politics playing out?
the no, the deep state don't want him to be re-elected, and they're very, very strong. But every day is fluid. I've always said it's about 50-50 right now for
Right,
him to be
right,
re-elected.
right.
But the Russian thing is encouraging him. The
Yes.
Russian, Putin came here and signed a contract and so on to sell more oil and gas, and they need energy to fight the war. And what's happening is Biden's weakness. Biden, of course, has people like John Kerry working with the deep state to take him down, and Soros and so on. But then it's a daily fight, and if he is willing to be dirty, I mean, there's nothing wrong with murdering those deep state people. Just go in and send people murder. If he's willing to go to that extent, that's what happened in Japan before they entered the war. They basically murdered the prime minister and all those people, all these politicians that they call the civilian politician. They have the military and the civilian. They murdered them, and then that's how the Japanese aggression started. They can do anything. It's a lawless country. You people or us. I mean, here we talk about law. We don't do things, but they can do anything. There is no bottom line. That is the danger. And the problem is they're watching U.S. If Biden has another 3 years to go, right, and if he continue to be weak, right now, look at this sanction. They are talking about only sanction those people in Ukraine. They are not talking about, this morning, they are going to talk about sanction in Russia. But most important thing is energy. They are afraid. Italy already have come out and say, no, we shouldn't do anything on energy. We need the Russian energy. So how do you sanction Russia without sanctioning the energy?
So, a couple of things that I think maybe Biden missed as a trick. I just want to draw some parallels. Viewers, I am not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. I am an independent. Elmer is not even a citizen of United States. So we are saying it as we see it. So let's just draw a couple of parallels. Trump, when he walked away from the agreement with Iran, India had a huge problem. India was getting a lot of crude from Iran, and if they were going to stop getting that, they needed a secondary source. What Trump did was he said that we will give you the same terms, and tell you what, you don't even have to buy your oil now. We will hold it for you. You can draw down from our strategic reserves in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So India, instead of going to Iran, they just had to go a little further and get it from Saudi Arabia. So he had a plan B ready for India. So India didn't feel the pinch of walking away from the cheap Iranian oil that they were getting. So today, what has happened is, if Biden was serious about cutting off Nord Stream 2, then he should have had already supplied energy like natural gas and crude from Louisiana into Germany. Say, here, try this out. Do you think something like that happened? Or like you said, US is still sitting back and watching? What is your observation on that? You're close to DC.
Exactly. The whole thing, the problem you see, the inflation you see in the United States, the biggest inflation in the last 40 years is because of his energy policies. Cutting off the Keystone pipeline, and then he's not granting license for more fracking, both for gas and oil. And U.S. has tremendous, as you know, they have lots of fracking going on in Louisiana. But the biggest is the one on with New Mexico and Texas, the Permian
North
Basin.
Dakota and South Dakota also.
It's
Yeah.
called the Permian Basin. So
Yes,
that
yes.
is huge. But to be able to supply to Asia, the closest is in fact the Permian Basin. They can reach
Yes,
out to the
yes,
Pacific, and
yes,
and Trump's plan is to have enough LNG and oil for the entire Asia Pacific. Right? They can pump out. And with Biden, it came, and then suddenly you need to import oil from Russia. Can you imagine? And let me tell you, just now, a few hours ago, Blinken has contacted the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi to ask him to help on this Ukraine situation. Can you imagine? These are the enemy who's trying to screw you, and you're trying to ask him to mediate, to help. The whole thing is a joke. So the energy, going back to what you said, Trump was building up the energy and make U.S. the biggest energy maker in the world, and to be able to supply both to Europe and to Asia with LNG. The future is really LNG because car will use less and less oil, and that U.S. have enough oil, and also Alaska. You know how much oil U.S. have in Alaska, oil and gas, and it's halfway already to Asia. So if U.S. continue with this green policy, this bullshit policy, they are going to lose. Trump had a very good policy, and oil price was cheap, gas price was cheap, coal price was cheap, and then Biden came along, everything became so expensive. I just saw the pump is here; it's unbelievable. And on top of that, the energy created the inflation. That is the main component of the inflation. And when people don't see the end, how much higher the price is going to be, then they keep on adding price. I'm going to raise my price, and since I don't know what price tomorrow energy is, let me raise my price first. And
Snowballing.
that is what's the hyperinflation come from. It's nothing to do with Federal Reserve. All that is window dressing. The primary problem is the energy, because everything we do, including food, agriculture, come from energy. Right? I mean, all the feedstock, all the fertilizer, everything boils down to energy. So this is the whole problem. It's a U.S. policy problem. As long as Biden is in the White House for another 3 years, it's enough time for China to do something serious and drive U.S. back to at least the middle of Pacific. And this, remember, when Xi Jinping met with in fact Obama, I'm talking about even during the Obama, they said we are big states, super states, superpowers, and the Pacific is big enough for two superpowers. And of course, Obama ignored him. Obama understood it, but he didn't want to come into a conversation. Obama is kind of weak also. So already, Xi Jinping is pretty honest. This guy is quite honest. He declared himself, even during Obama's, we're talking about 2012, the year 2012. They had a meeting in the Rose Garden, and he promised everything. We're not going to build any base in South China Sea, this and that. Turn around. Didn't stop at all. They knew Obama is not going to stop them. So this whole thing started, I didn't invent it. It started at least 10 years ago. But that strategy, even when I was in China about 20 years ago, they've been talking about the strategy when they have enough in economic power, as strong as they've earned a lot of money. So they will adopt that Japanese policy. And China, we consider us, all right, I mean, including myself sometimes, we are the center of the world. That's the whole word. China means central country. We are the central country. And we used to have all these countries, the vassal states, Korea, Japan, all the way down to Indonesia and the Philippines. All those are vassal states. And Xi Jinping's dream is to go back to that. And you saw that, Zhang He is the person that, the big fleet, they went all the way to Africa, and they give away gift. They didn't occupy it, all right? Which means this is their sphere of influence. They don't need to occupy. And this is the One Belt, One Road. This version came almost like 400 years ago. This idea of this sphere, all right, Indo-Pacific sphere didn't come today. It came from the Ming Dynasty, which is the 1600. They sent 7 times the fleet. It's a huge fleet, all right, really almost 500 boats, or big boats, all the way down to Sri Lanka and all the way to Kenya. to Africa. So this has been there in their mind. This is their sphere. So we really need somebody to study the Japanese plan. But Japanese plan does not include India, right? So, but we need to study. I mean, India need to study the Chinese ambition. Of course, we modern Chinese, Westernized Chinese, we don't have that anymore. All right, we consider a person as one. People are the most important thing, but they consider land very much the same as Russian. The Russian, what they do, a country is great or not. First, is how big you are, how much land you own. All right, this is the Genghis Khan. This is the Genghis Khan concept, and this is the Russian Tsar concept. This has been going on. These guys are still living in the old world, and they become allies. And this is what I've been talking about, the axis, the new axis. And somehow the Germans are not so sure which way to go. Not so sure, because they will also want to be part of that. If they succeed, it will be very rich for the German. And I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself. But you
No, no.
really have to look at the big picture and study Chinese history, the Ming Dynasty.
Yes.
And before Ming, of course, is the Yuan Dynasty, which is Genghis Khan. And you know what he's done, all the way to Poland, all the way
Yes.
to Poland and all the way to Vienna. That's what they did. And it's not a joke. And the Mongolian population was very small. At that time, less than 1 million. They drove all the way. I'm sure they cover part of India too. Went all the way to
Yes, they
Vienna,
did. Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
and that is history. Sorry, I've been a
No,
little.
no worries. To the best of your knowledge, is Bo Xilai still alive?
What? Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Bo X I
Oh,
L
Bo
A
Xilai is
I.
still alive. He is not in jail. He is living in Dalian, in a seaside villa in Dalian. Of course, under, and he's capable. But let me tell you, just another guy with a communist mind. Another one more. You have to do away with the system, the communist system. That system, they don't invent. They say people are all slaves. You just work for me. Okay. If they're slaves, they have no innovation, right? No
Right.
problem. We can steal from US. There's Silicon Valley right here. All right. We can keep stealing. We can bribe them. We can steal. So they've been stealing for the last 30, 40 years. So everything they do is so-called high tech. And they use it even better than the States because they have a bigger market. And the Chinese are very good in applying technology, not in inventing technology. So look at Alibaba. What is it? Same as Amazon. He does it bigger than Amazon, right, on selling. And then the social media, the WeChat, this and that, they copy America. But US have a population maybe one third or one quarter of China. So they can only do so
1/4.
much with the rest
Yeah.
of the world. But
Yeah.
China is doing so well, and since China do not respect human rights, they can do it much better because they can use that information and to do more business. That's what happened. And now China say, no, Xi Jinping said, no, I will not let private enterprises control it and develop it and make more money. We want to control it for military purpose, for security purpose. So that's why he took over all the IT companies, even the DD, which is their equivalent of Uber, right? So this is what's happening. Of course, we know in the future, whoever has information will rule, and he will have information to rule the people and to expand, to fulfill his dream. Xi Jinping, the Chinese dream, is to return to the old glory of the Genghis Khan and the Ming Dynasty. That was the Chinese dream. They feel they've been mistreated. Same thing as what Putin is saying. Oh, you guys have robbed me. We used to have a USSR so big. Now we lost the Eastern Europe. I want it back. This is what Putin is saying. And China is saying the same thing. People with that kind of concept, the old-fashioned mind, geopolitical land is everything, strong country, people sacrifice for their country, and they have to be patriotic, and that, they have the same mentality. And this is going to happen if Biden continues to be weak. This is why we're so worried when Trump lost his election. Nobody dares to bully Trump, but everybody is ready to bully Biden.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Elmer. So, the question that we are leaving you with is this a megalomaniac versus midget battle that we are seeing play out? And the first thing the megalomaniacs did was to take the big player out of the room. That was Trump. We have again told you this is an attempt to try and educate. Many of us are so consumed with our day-to-day problems that we don't have time to look up and see what is going on around us. Whereas some people only do that. And this is where the West and the East are a little bit different. Least plans long term. West is almost immediately. We're all looking quarter to quarter, just like the way our corporates are announcing earnings. Everybody is looking quarter to quarter. So I hope we have instilled in you some knowledge of what is going on. Also, by the way, there are conflicting reports coming from Ukraine. One of the things that the Russians did was they completely cyber attacked. So information coming out of Ukraine is almost minimal. So I have two different versions coming in. One is that Putin has not gone in, his forces have not gone in, and they are just saying that we have recognized these two, and he's sitting and watching from across the fence. The other side is saying that the troops have been there already for 2 weeks. In fact, I think that is true. I'll tell you why, Elmer. We can take this up in the next week's debate because we are getting information also. I'll tell you why the troops are in. You notice that for the last week or so, there is an exodus of population from the
700,000.
Yeah, the people have been going towards where? Towards Russia. Why would they want to go towards Russia? They should be going to inwards into Ukraine, towards Kiev. They're not doing that. So there is a story here that needs to be unearthed. We hope to bring you the real facts. Please stay tuned and we'll be back again. And Elmer, thank you so much for accommodating us amid your busy schedule. You are a globe-trotting young man and more power to you, sir.
I'm 73 years old.
Thank you so much, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you for inviting me. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.